Hey there, this is James Tripp. This is a video for James Tripp Chaos Wave and for Hypnosis Without Trance. The topic we are discussing is the truth about hypnosis stunts. Now, I am making this video because just recently I've done something I've never done before, which is some Facebook advertising, some paid advertising for my Hypnosis Without Trance online deep apprenticeship. And what this means is I started getting some comments back on some of the stuff I've put out there. And the comments are not always from people who are perhaps within my circle. They are from outside. And therefore, they're going to be a little bit more critical about what it is that I'm offering, what it is that I'm putting out there. And I think that this is a good thing. So let me share a comment that I got on a video I put out. It's a video I put out where I'm doing some name amnesia. I'm doing a name amnesia piece, talking about it, breaking it down, this kind of thing. One of the comments I got here is, I won't say the name of the guy who left the comment because I don't have his consent to be having this conversation, but it's a really useful thing that he said. So he said, name amnesia, cheap stage hypnosis trick, is what he said. Now my response to this was this: well, I've never done stage hypnosis. I worked this up as a cheap street hypnosis trick. Now, in a sense, there's a kind of flippant response. But I do want to address what I think that this guy is pointing to, what I think that he is pointing to. And I might take exception with the framing there that he's laid on, the idea that this is a cheap trick. Well, what do you mean cheap? You know, what does that mean, cheap? But I think I know what he means by trick. What he means basically, I think, is essentially this is a stunt. I think that's what he's saying. What you're showing here is a stunt. If people were to learn to do this, what they wouldn't develop was some kind of magical power to wave their fingers and erase the name from anyone they encounter out there in the world. I think that's basically what the guy means. I think what he's basically saying here is this isn't really a power, this is a stunt, okay? And if that's what the guy's saying, I'm 100% in agreement. And that's why I didn't defend it and go, no, it's not a cheap hypnosis, it's not a cheap stage hypnosis stunt. You know, it's not stage hypnosis because I don't know anything about stage hypnosis, or I do, I've never done it, I've got opinions about it, but that's not my area of expertise, and that isn't where I worked up this name amnesia stuff. Where I worked this up was in a street hypnosis context. And I think that actually makes a difference. I'm going to say why. But note the term street hypnosis context. Street hypnosis context. Because this is key here, the idea of context. We human beings are really bad at seeing context, and context is absolutely huge. So, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is the name amnesia thing that I do does not work cross-contextually, right? In any context. What that means is if I go out wandering out into the world and I walk up to people and I go, look at me, now a funny thing just happened, your name has just disappeared completely and there's nothing now where your name was. Completely gone, nothing where your name was. All right? Now, if I did something like that, if I just went out as a general experiment and walked up to people and said, excuse me, and maybe I'd knock them on the shoulder and pat and interrupt them for a moment, okay? And they go, huh? And then I delivered some linguistic material that is structured in a particular way to kind of confuse, befuddle, tie the name up in knots. Then I were to look at them dead and tell them there's nothing where your name was and suggest that directly. If I were to do all of those things, I'd probably get it to work a few times, okay? Just no setup, no shaping of context, just going straight in. I would probably get it to work a number of times. And if you were to look and break that down and go, well, what's going on? Well, we've got some confusion going on. Okay, people like to be able to make sense of the moment. If you confuse them, then they start grasping for things. If I give a suggestion, I look at them dead on, I make eye contact, I look grounded in my reality like I'm speaking absolute truth. That seeds doubt in people's mind. All of this stuff is confusing. If you confuse somebody enough in these ways, getting access to something that you would think would come to them readily and be commonplace becomes more challenging because you've disrupted their regular access patterns. Now, if I were to go out in the world and do this, here's what I would predict the result would be, because I haven't done this. I haven't gone out and just done this as a random experiment, and I don't particularly have an appetite for doing so. But, if I were to do it, here's what I predict would happen. The vast majority of people would not immediately say, well, my name's John, or whatever their name is, right? They'd still be struggling to try and make sense of the moment and therefore not accessing their name. So I would get a period of time where there was no name access occurring, okay? And then some people would take the further suggestion and get a really profound block of their name. Some people, all right? That's likely as not what would happen. Now, of course, if I went out and I videoed this, and then I picked the absolute best examples and put them up, that'd look really good for me. And that's the kind of thing that some street mentalists and this sort of thing do. But I wouldn't have a special power, would I? I wouldn't be a mind control Svengali. What I would have is I would have skills, and skills that I could deploy to maybe get a certain effect. Now, this particular effect that I'm getting doesn't really have any practical use. It's not pragmatic. So therefore, we could say it was a stunt. Now, there are other variables that you can add to the mix that would massively increase the likelihood of such a stunt working. And the elements that you add in are starting to take more full charge of the context in which something's happening. I've just talked about the content, going up, not doing anything to shape the context. You start to take charge of the context. Now, the commenter said that this was a cheap stage hypnosis trick. So let's look at the context of stage hypnosis. A stage hypnotist very carefully sets context. So right from the get-go, they're putting all these materials out in the world that are playing certain frames. And this is key, how we frame things. And framing is a kind of technical term for the structures we offer people to make sense by. Okay, and this is a craft in and of itself. It's a huge part of the hypnosis without trance approach to hypnosis, is how we set frames. So stage hypnotists has got their materials out there, their promotional materials. A lot of people that will come to a stage hypnosis show, they've got some sense that it's a real thing, that there's something real to hypnosis, that hypnosis is a thing. Okay, they may have some skepticism in the mix, but the real hardcore skeptics are not likely to rock up. There may be people rocking up with a sense of, well, I'm going to test and see if this really works, but they're actually open to the possibility of it working, otherwise they wouldn't be there to be testing it. They wouldn't be coming in with a testing frame. So already the frame is being shaped, already the context is being shaped. And then a stage hypnotist, they will run a number of what are classically called suggestibility tests. I don't like that term. I prefer to think in terms of responsiveness than suggestibility, because I have no desire to frame, even within myself, the people I work with as being somehow manipulatable or some puppet for me to play with. So I don't like that suggestibility frame. I like the idea of responsiveness, but that's a point aside. So classically, the stage hypnotist will work through these processes, and they will find people who buy into the frame and are responsive. Now, when you have somebody who buys into the frame and is responsive, what you do inside, now you've set context, what you do inside of that becomes less important. Okay, the technical elements are less important. The more strongly someone's bought into context, the less important the technical elements that you operate, the maneuvers within, the less important that they are. The less they buy into context, the more important that those elements are. And at no point do you have mind control. All right? We're always nudging complex systems towards outcomes. So, is name amnesia a stunt? Yes, it is a stunt. Is it a power? No, it is not. Is skill involved? Yes, skill is absolutely involved in setting and shaping contexts and in how you operate within those contexts. All right? And my approach to teaching hypnosis is to teach both. To teach the highest possible level of technical skill. That's the particular specific maneuvers, linguistic, nonverbal communication, the things that you use to nudge people, to prod, to poke, to destabilize them psychologically or focus them in. All of that technical stuff, I love that stuff. It really is powerful stuff. Does it make you a mind control master? No. Does it increase your ability to influence people? Absolutely. And that's why I believe it is well worth learning. So, yes, these things are stunts. They absolutely are stunts. And any good stunt takes some skill to pull off. Any good stunt takes some skill to pull off. This is why, when I'm teaching this stuff in the online deep apprenticeship, Hypnosis Without Trance online deep apprenticeship, and that sounds like a plug, maybe it is. But when I'm teaching this stuff, I'm always saying to people, the point here is not to learn this, it is to learn from it, right? It is to learn from it. I came to hypnosis with no interest in performance. It was not my interest. And that's why I've never done stage hypnosis, never had any interest in doing it. The only reason I did street hypnosis, which has a kind of performance element, i.e. you're doing these stunts, basically, I was interested in the craft of pulling the stunts off. And this is an area where stage hypnosis and street hypnosis are actually quite different. Because with stage hypnosis, you have a lot more power to shape context. Because the people who are coming to you, and with hypnotherapy this is true as well, by the way, the people who are coming to you, you've already put materials out there in the world that are starting to shape their frames, and they are self-electing to come to you. Street hypnosis is different. It's a much more challenging dojo because you're going out there, you're going around. I used to go around kind of pub beer gardens a lot. It's more like pub beer garden hypnosis than street hypnosis. Places where people are going to hang about. I wouldn't accost people on the street when they were in a hurry to get somewhere. That's not the greatest way to do it. But what you do have to do is develop the skill to lay frames in quickly and shape context quickly if you wish to increase the likelihood of your stunts actually working, right? And that's the name of the game for me, is increasing the likelihood. The reason I did street hypnosis is because I was fascinated by this. I have a fascination between the nexus of mind and life, how our minds shape experience, what influences us, how we influence others. To me, street hypnosis was a wonderful laboratory to explore. And what I'm exploring with are experiments, or stunts, if you want to call them that, or something more dismissive. The aim of the game is not to become a Svengali who can erase people's names with a flick of the hand. The aim of the game is to discover things, to work things up, to develop things, and to not learn them, but to learn from them. So there is a phenomenal amount that I have learned from doing street hypnosis, from these stunts, that serves me in all manner of other contexts, much more practical, pragmatic contexts. The context I tend to use this stuff is when I'm doing change work with people, when I'm helping people transform their outlook of life, their automated responses, the way they have been into a way they are going to be different. That's one area where I use this a lot. And another area is in business, in all my business communications, when I'm having meetings with people who I might be collaborators with. I'm not trying to control them, but I do want to run a dynamic to create a certain generative context with them, whereby we can co-create what we want to create. Context shaping, framing, this powerful stuff. this glorious stuff. So I'm often saying within the online deep apprenticeship, the point isn't to learn this, the point is to learn from this. Now, I'll say this, an additional point here. A lot of people who are into change work and hypnotherapy, they sometimes will look at it and go, yeah, well, how am I going to use these hypnotic phenomena in my change work sessions? Like, I only want to learn it if I can absolutely use it. And people who are creative, I sometimes creatively use hypnotic phenomena, and there are other people who creatively use hypnotic phenomena a lot more than I do, even. So I'll sometimes use these kind of things, like explicitly, I'll use the stunts in the session, sometimes. But to me, that's still not the point of them. The point of them is everything I learn from them that helps me create very different shifts, not a name amnesia, not a hand stick, none of this stuff. Maybe a shift from all is lost to possibility. Okay? The content of the shift is different, but the principle's the same. Directing attention, leading cognition, seeding ideas, shaping context, bringing somebody to a new phenomenological experience. So the stunts have a role. They are a training ground, they are a laboratory, they are a dojo in which to work up your skills, or they're an exercise within a dojo to work up your skills. They are not reflective of some superpower. They are merely a vehicle for developing skills. So that's my truth about hypnosis stunts. Yes, they're stunts, or they are vehicles. Vehicles for developing all sorts of cool stuff and for making that stuff explicit, right? It's like you see somebody in a boxing gym, maybe they're working a heavy bag, maybe they're working the speedball, or they're like ducking in and out under a line or something like that. None of these things are the ultimate aim. They are means by which to develop certain skills and attributes. That exactly is what these hypnosis stunts are for me. And I think they're incredibly valuable when used in that way. Okay, so if you have got some goodness from this video, if it's tickled some neurons in some kind of a useful way, please give it some love, like the video. If this is your first time on the channel, you're interested in hypnosis, NLP, whatever, brain wrangling stuff, using your mind to shape your life, the nexus of mind and life. This is not all about hypnosis, this channel. Hypnosis is just one area that I've explored. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe. And the most beautiful thing of all are questions and comments. Use this channel as a resource. The more people ask questions, the more we get to explore interesting things. So make sure you do that. Use that comment section below. Anyhows, I'm out of here. Until we next connect, keep on using your mind to shape your life.